We just we just rolled out a weekly live stream, and so we're really glad that you're joining us today. We're going to talk a little wealth transfer. I've got a pretty extensive experience in estate planning as an attorney, having had my own practice and whatnot. And so I like speaking to these issues for people, not only from a from a wealth transfer or a cost standpoint. And we're going to talk about what wealth transfer is first. But I wanted Barry's perspective as well, because Barry has a lot of experience with the ultimate asset we talk about all the time on our channel. So we're gonna bring in the ultimate asset into the discussion as a transfer vehicle, which it is. It's a very awesome transfer vehicle. So I'm going to work at responding to any questions as they arise. We'll see how long we want to go here, but to kick it off, what is wealth transfer? Basically, we're talking about one generation to the next. And Barry, I want to hear your take on it too. But moving wealth, moving assets, right? It could be cash, it could be real estate, it could be stocks, it could be, policy, cash, death benefit, whatever that is, from one generation to the next. So, how does that process happen? When as soon as somebody dies, that wealth needs to be transferred somewhere, right? Because it's got to go out of their individual name and into the names of whoever the heirs are. It could be a trust, right? The successor, if it's in a trust, it could be staying in trust. It could be being paid to beneficiaries. There's just all kinds of ways that wealth can be transferred. But the one point I want to address before I kick it over to you, Barry, for thoughts is, if it can be, the average way that people transfer wealth is by default. So they're basically not thinking it through in advance, and maybe they think they're immortal, or maybe they just don't want to think about it, which is a true aspect of this. So, so they didn't do anything, intentional to try and make it easier. So it goes by default. And if you go by default, you got big problems, usually because you have the probate courts that are getting involved. You have lawyers, you have judges, you also have, so even if you have mostly like 401ks and IRAs, whatever, then you have inefficiencies with that, which I know we're going to get into in a little bit when we kind of compare different assets. But what you have is costs. You have hassles and time. That takes a lot of time to transfer certain kinds of things. And if you don't have a trust, you got problems. And so, hey, Matthew, thanks for checking in. I'll try to shout out when you guys check in. So, and glad to have you here. So, yeah, so you have all these issues. And what we want to talk about today is we want to talk about transferring wealth efficiently, that there's a quiet and orderly way to transfer wealth. There's a couple different things that can come together to do that. But the one in particular that I want to propose is the 7702 contract, what has all the tax benefits as a life insurance death benefit. But we'll dive into that. But I want to hear your take, Barry. What's your experience with wealth transfer?
Yeah, and we are live. This is awesome, doing these YouTube lives. Yep. And yes, you can ask a question if we can see it. We're getting some love. We're getting some questions, and we'll kind of watch through the screen here. So when you think about wealth
somebody
transfer,
just said, I believe 7702 is the best. So we already have a voice awesome. Of confidence there. So great. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Well, the goal with wealth transfer is to leave the next generation wealthier than the original generation, right? So as you transfer wealth over time, every generation should be getting more wealthy. And Steve and I were talking about this before we started the live YouTube, is that if you look at what the Vanderbilts did in American history, their wealth transfer was gone in about 2 or 3 generations. Yeah. You look at what the Rockefellers did, they kept building assets, and every generation after that kept getting more wealthy. So there's a proper way to transfer wealth. And Steve, I love what you said. Most people are transferring wealth by default, right? That means there's not a plan. So what we're recommending and advising people today is that you plan. That could be a trust, could be as simple as a will. We'd obviously recommend a trust. But then how are some of those assets that you have protected? How are they going to transfer? There's different rules around qualified money like your 401k and IRA as
Yep.
compared to rules around a tax-free death benefit with 7702.
Hold that thought. Matthew just asked if he could ask questions. I think that we should have it kind of have this at least first live. Yes, Matthew, you can ask a question. Yes, go ahead and ask a question. He's saying he's been waiting. He's on the edge of his seat. So feel free to ask. I have to take these questions on the fly. So just, you know, okay. Anyway, so we have to kind of take these things on the fly as we're having our discussion too. So if people do have questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat. We'll try to answer it. There's always we'll have links so that you can also email questions or comment when this video is in on the channel recorded. Then you can also add comments and we'll respond to those as well. So we know that we want to help you get your questions answered no matter what. But yeah.
Steve, as you're looking at that, let me address something. Steve and I, we just did a video a couple days ago. It's going to be coming out on the YouTube channel. And we were talking about if you are a parent and you have an IRA or 401k and you pass away, that money is going to go to your kids in most cases, and it has to be paid out over a 10-year time frame. Well, did you know that if you, the parent, are in a lower tax bracket than your child that's getting the money, that your child has to pay the taxes in their tax bracket? So this is something that you need to be aware of when it comes to wealth transfer. Your children might be in a tax bracket that's double your tax bracket. Rather than 10 or 12 or 15%, they might be in a 22 or 35 or 37% tax bracket. That's what we're talking about. Having proper planning and understanding. Should I start spending the money now, have it in my own tax bracket, then give it to my kids? Should it go through a trust? Do I need a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, depending on the size of my estate? It's planning that we really want to address for proper wealth transfer.
Right. And if you do have questions, you can ask them. So just go ahead and ask them. You don't have to ask me if you can ask. Just shoot it out. And if I can't get to it right away, I'll write it down and we'll try to get back to it. But we want to keep the discussion rolling as well. So, so to Barry's point, yeah, if you pass assets along to kids, if you pass assets along to kids, then they're going to end up having to take that money. If it's taxable, then they have to put it, if they're making more money than you, then they have to account for that in their own tax bracket, right? That's the key. And so, you know, a lot of assets like 401ks, for example, you know, you have this thing called the Secure Act, which regulates like inherited IRAs and 401ks and these kinds of things. So, you know, that those have been changed recently so that they're not as advantageous for heirs. You used to be able to take a 401k and the person receiving it, one of the kids or whatever, could stretch it out for their whole life. And so they wouldn't have to take all that income right away. Well, now they have to take it within 10 years. So that's just one example on how certain assets, 401ks are a huge one, that are touted to be a lot of people's maybe their only major asset other than their home. And you know, they pass that along to kids, and then the kids have a lot of restrictions. It's very complicated, by the way. They have a lot of issues, you know, trying to figure out how to make those distributions out of a 401k IRA. So, you know, so there are superior ways. Just because you can put a beneficiary on it doesn't mean that it's a great way to pass you know, pass assets to younger generations.
Steve, let's talk about from a business owner perspective. If you have a business and you want to pass that business on to your children, there's a proper way to do it. One of the things that we recommend are buy-sell agreements, key person agreements, where you're using a life insurance death benefit that can go to the business, that can go to the company when the business owner passes away, to help support the business, bring in more cash, marketing, hiring, equipment, whatever that might look like. That's a really important piece to have for someone that is a business owner. That succession plan. If you don't have a succession plan put together and you don't have a trust put together, as Steve said earlier, it's going to be default. When the defaults today are your assets can run through the court system, probate. We've seen that in a lot of high profile cases. I think of one right now, Prince, the musician. He didn't have a will, he didn't have a trust. He probably
Right.
had a net worth of over $300 million. And it
Yep.
took, I think, 6 years to settle that estate. We're
Yeah.
saying you can set up a trust, set up these life insurance policies within a matter of months and not have to deal with that backside trouble upon someone's passing or a business owner's passing.
Right, right, and that's the key. I mean, you can, and you're bringing, trusts are coming up naturally because they function a lot like a 7702 cash value policy, right? Because an insurance policy is kind of like a trust. If you look at that, it's a contract just like a trust, and it houses cash value during your lifetime, and then it has a beneficiary at death. So it functions pretty much like a trust does in many ways. A trust is the same thing. You basically put assets in it during life. It can be cash, could be homes, could be other kinds of investments. And then upon death, then you have that going to beneficiaries in the same way. So it's no accident that 7702 contracts are great for transferring wealth, and they're used all the time, actually in tandem with trusts. So if you use a trust and a 7702 contract, then you've got two contracts working together. If you think about it, you have your life insurance contract, and then you have your trust, and you have your death. Upon death, those monies are paid to your trust, and so you basically took and put those into a new contract. You put those proceeds, and that way, then the new trustee can then orderly, handle all the assets for the beneficiaries. So it's a really smooth way to transfer wealth. On the other hand, if you have, like you said, if Prince's estate, he had a will. I mean, he had like $300 million, and he had a will. That is a huge probate. People came out of the woodwork to fight over all the assets. A lot of people that were kind of remote relatives and things, I guess, felt they had a stake in his estate. So
Yeah.
he'd have just,
Yeah.
like, if he'd have taken an afternoon off, and just gone over to any lawyer would have clamored to handle his estate. He could have gotten the top lawyer in Minnesota, which, by the way, is my home state. But and take an afternoon and say, well, this is where I want my money to go. I'll put it all in this trust, and you can give to these people, and it would have been really seamless. You might have still had some rumbling from people, but it would have been hard to do anything with a really good plan. So who knows if the people that got money out of that estate were actually, the ones that Prince wanted to have everything.
That's right.
It's certainly
That's
a
right.
question mark. So
Yeah. And two things I'm thinking of. One is today the estate tax exemption is $15 million a person. That's $30 million for a couple. So obviously, a person has to have a great deal of net worth in order to have to pay the estate tax. But if you do have to pay estate tax, it's about 50% above the exemption that's going to go to Uncle Sam, that's going to go to the government. There are ways that you can mitigate against that with it's called an ILIT, an irrevocable life insurance trust. You can use the death benefit to pay estate tax instead of hard assets or cash, right? Or selling stocks or mutual funds or whatever business interests you might have. And we are totally adamant about having people get protected because the general rule out there, we talked about this yesterday, of buying term insurance, investing the difference. People might say, well, I've got a will, but a trust is so much more robust, and whole life insurance is so much more robust. So when Steve's talking about 7702, he's talking about a whole life contract, fully. There's a guaranteed death benefit payout. So think about this. If you have an opportunity to put money into a whole life policy and you know unequivocally that there's a guaranteed death benefit on the back end of your passing, and it's going to be much larger than the amount of premium you paid, that's a great thing for your family. The second thing I wanted to say is that it doesn't have to be an individual. or a trust, or you could not name an individual in a trust. If you want to name your favorite charity that you want to leave money to, a church, an organization, maybe you love animals and you want to leave it to the Humane Society, a trust allows you to control your assets beyond your passing.
Right. Right.
Who doesn't want that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've passed away. I now get to control all my money. I dictate where it goes and when it goes.
Yeah. And
That's powerful control.
yeah, and we have a platform that allows people to, allows, our experts to help facilitate people getting trust. And, people may be listening like, I've heard of living trust. What's that? Well, living trust is something that you can set up and make changes to at any time during your lifetime. And upon death, that becomes what we call an irrevocable trust. So it becomes, fixed at that point. And it's a great vehicle. And whether you have like a lot of wealth and you're listening, or whether you're just getting started, a lot of these things apply. Having a cash value whole life policy, having a trust. I mean, it's kind of fundamental to your family not being thrown into chaos, upon dying, or upon you dying, because of the fact that people don't know how to navigate. I mean, would you know anything about probate court? I'm wondering if anybody listening knows anything about probate, unless they've been through it. I mean, there might be somebody that had a parent or a relative go through it, and then they got an education real fast. But this is a very stressful process, and you got to go sit with lawyers, and you're kind of at their mercy at that point. I mean, if you had a trust all set up, you're not really at their mercy. You've got a document, and you can say, and you can get a couple opinions on it if you want. But when you have to go to probate, it is what it is. I mean, you just wait. We got to file a probate. Okay, well, it'll be this much, and so it just becomes very stressful for people. I've observed it so much. By the way, Jason asked a question: why did somebody as wealthy and smart as Prince not have a trust? And there's a lot of speculation around why people don't do certain things.
And Steve, it's not just Prince. I mean,
Yeah.
just because someone's a celebrity or
Yeah.
a rock star doesn't mean they have people around them that know what they're doing. We could cite many, many different examples:
Yeah.
football team owners, baseball team
Yeah.
owners, and business owners. There are so many wealthy people out there that don't have proper planning. Prince is one example of thousands and thousands of people in that same situation.
Yeah. And I brought up one idea. I mean, they don't want to go and deal with going to a lawyer and go through all that sort of discomfort of having to figure it all out, because there's more sort of mortality stuff in there. It's not the most fun topic to deal with, but I think it's a peace of mind thing. There's a lot of estate planners that I've heard describe themselves as something like peace promoters, where they're there to help people get peace of mind around the stuff. So and there's a huge peace of mind, even just having a cash value policy and knowing that your family gets a nice check if something does happen to you. So that's worth a lot just in and of itself. And so that's why this topic is so great. We've had a lot of interest around this topic of wealth transfer. Um, there's the 100 trillion wealth transfer that actually, with the baby boomers, as you guys probably know, listening, that's a fact. We're probably in the middle to maybe early middle of that at this point. So that's a lot of wealth transferring to younger generations. And there's so many issues around it. So you have the physical issues, right? You have the courtroom structural kind of things. So let me give you guys three ideas for wealth transfer. One is structure. It's the trust. It's the 7702. It's the stuff Barry just mentioned. You also have the tax efficiency. So tax efficiency, like if you go through, you're going to get hammered in taxes, right? Your family will, if the kids all have to take all this extra income. So, and you want to make sure, and also estate taxes. Like if you're listening and you have a big estate, then that means if you're over the threshold, it's a 45% tax has to be paid typically within 9 months.
And that's federal. Plus, you might have to add
Yeah.
state on top of that. That's why I say 50% in general, but it's ridiculous. So the government's taking money that isn't even theirs just because someone was successful.
Right. And the third piece of it is your kids. The third piece we want to call, human capital, or we want to call like familyness. That is one word that is actually a defined term for the human resources within a family. So if you're an older, an older person and you have kids, and maybe you have some estate to think about, the one thing is like, what are the kids like? There's value to those kids, right? And people even say that the wealth of a family is in its members, not so much in the money that's there and things like that. And that's why a lot of wealth is lost within the first, second generation after death. Believe it. Even massive wealth is lost typically, statistically, within
Yeah.
3 generations, they say. So,
And Steve, I've heard people, clients of mine, I don't want to leave money to my kids. But guess what? They want to leave money to their grandkids or
mm,
their great grandkids. So there is, again, a way in the trust that you can dictate where those assets go. What we provide at Insurance and Estates, we help people get guarantees, get predictability, get access to cash, tax free use of money,
yeah,
certainty, and really peace of mind. That's huge.
yeah,
This is a peace of mind conversation when it comes to wealth transfer, but it takes effort, takes a little bit of work up front and some planning, but it can
yep.
happen.
Yeah, and it's funny though, we do a lot of videos together, Barry, and we also have a lot of content on the channel, and we talk a lot about this asset. The one that we're starting to talk about more is wealth transfer, the planning that goes around that, and why it's such a great contractual solution for the chaos that can happen when people try to transfer from one generation to the next. So it's the one that gets forgotten a lot in a lot of the discussions that we have. So why do entertainers and athletes typically have this problem at higher rates than wealthy people? I don't know if that's true. I think they're just more visible, but
Well, I think
it,
it, I think it might be true because an athlete today, if you're playing for the NBA, and we've got some professional athletes that we work with, or you're an NFL pro or a hockey pro, whatever, they're W-2 employees for that particular association. So they're in one of the highest tax brackets possible. They might have side endorsements through a different business or whatnot, but they're W-2 employees.
yeah,
The people that are surrounded by them generally, and this is what I've seen because I've worked with some of these people, are traditional planners.
mm,
It's, hey, let's get the 401k, let's get the IRA, let's get as many tax deductions as possible. They're not really doing thorough planning with them to say, we need a plan for your future. Like, how much tax free money do you want down the road? We've
right,
got to set up the trust. We got to make sure your estate is in place. Just the people they're surrounded by, they're looking at, I'm going to capture fees. I want to make commissions. And it's unfortunate to say, but a lot of those professional athletes fall in that category.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's true. I think that if you're an agent or a professional listening, I mean, obviously, we want to emphasize being a trusted advisor. I mean, I know there's probably a portion of the people that work with the athletes that think, yeah, they need to have a trust, these kinds of things. And that knowledge is becoming more prominent. But I agree with you, Barry, that there probably is a dollars driven. You got to be really, I mean, man, that's a vulnerable position to be a professional athlete and have people converging on you that way. And you can't be sure, right? You can't be sure they have your best interests in mind. But if you're a professional athlete and you're listening, or you're maybe have the potential to be a professional athlete, you're going to want to at least know that they're using the right terminology with you. Do you have a trust yet? Do you have a way? Do you have a ready reserve? Are you truly diversified? We talk about true diversity, which means having safe capital. The wealthy that come from previous wealth typically understand safe capital at a very minimum if it's serious wealth, right? So they understand there's a portion of their wealth that should not be touched. And that's one of the coaching things that should be done with future generations too. Hey, Timmy, when you inherit this money, you're not going to touch this portion over here, right? You're going to, that's safe capital. You understand, family, here's the investment pool, maybe whatever group, right? Here's our real estate holdings, here's our safe capital. And the, again, the high cash value whole life foundation is a great place to house safe capital because of the guaranteed growth tax advantages and the leverage capability that you have to go after more high return assets and things. So
Steve, yeah, as we wrap up our YouTube live, there's a few things we recommend people do. Obviously, go to the Insurance and Estates YouTube channel, check out the videos, the content. Steve's got a couple books out. One is called The Intentional Wealth Effect. It's a great
uh,
book. Got another book out called The Ultimate Asset. My book here is called Live Rich, Die Rich. The things
uh,
we're talking about today, we've written about. We encourage people to get education because you getting educated is going to mitigate your risk, but it's also going to make you more powerful in the world of financial knowledge. We want to help
uh,
you with that.
Absolutely. And if you're brand new, you can check out my first book, which was the Self-Banking Blueprint, which is kind of my story as a young estate attorney, trust and estates attorney, and why I came across, or how I came across, I should say, this asset and why it continued to capture my attention over the years and why we finally decided to team, up with our team here and establish this platform with this mission to really promote sound, safe, structured planning to help people get something that is beyond what I think what the run of the mill advice is, in the culture today, unfortunately. So that's why we're here. That's why we're going to be doing these live videos, probably weekly. It looks like at this point. So, do you have any closing thoughts, or does anybody have any questions they want to fire out before we wrap up? Barry, do you have any closing thoughts other than what you just said?
Just my closing thoughts. We want people to get educated.
Yep.
Education is the key to bettering someone's life. And I think when they either go to the Insurance and Estates website or the Insurance and Estates YouTube channel, we are giving educational content. It's like drinking from a fire hose. If you want that full throttle information,
Yeah.
tons of content. So yes, get educated, learn more about this. And as we always say, if you're interested, look at your own numbers.
Yeah.
Talk with an estate attorney. Talk with myself, putting your illustration numbers together for 7702 for high cash value whole life. That's
Yeah.
really important because you want to see how these particular things will help you in your own life, your own planning, and then obviously generations to come.
Yep, and we work as a team so that if somebody's talking to Barry about a contract policy setup, if there are estate questions, we offer a lot of depth with those kind of things. So that's one of the goals that we had when we started out. Um, so we want to offer that support to people. David asked, "What are the names of the books again?" So you got my first book which was the Self-Banking Blueprint, and there'll be some links below when this is recorded, guys. So stop back, and you'll see the links. Barry's book is Live Rich, Die Rich. You can see it kind of behind him there. We also have The Ultimate Asset, which is written by me and my partner at I&E, Jason. And we've got, let's see, what else? We have a couple other newer ebooks.
The intentional wealth effect.
The
Yeah.
Intentional Wealth Effect. And we have a couple of newer books too that are going to be coming out on different aspects of the strategy, not to mention articles on virtually every topic that you could come up with in this arena that you can search right on our blog at InsuranceandEstates.com. So I appreciate the question. Our goal is to provide the best resources in the industry for you guys so that you can understand what's available to you and have honestly, the idea is have your safe bucket assets and your contract, your trust, and all these things linked in such a way that it's going to be really effective for you. So, and add wealth transfer to your arsenal. If you've been looking at infinite banking for a while, or high cash value whole life in some respect, add the idea of wealth transfer to your arsenal, because the idea is you're going to be able to grow wealth over a lifetime, and then you want to have a peaceful strategy, a structure in place for empowering future generations. With that, guys, if we didn't get your question answered, leave a comment to this video and we'll respond to it. And always join the community we want to have you do that, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And we'll see you in other videos and next week's live session. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Figure out how to not be live.